Hi, good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 26th, 2026, right? And I hope, I want to say I hope everyone had a great Memorial Day weekend, but I know that with all you all are going through right now, that it likely wasn't the most fun, right? Obviously, by now, I'm sure everyone has heard about the Friday's USCIS Policy Memorandum, right? Remember, this is just a policy memorandum from USCIS. And the long and short of it is they have basically said that they are going to be exercising very strict discretionary standards and adjustment of status and encouraging people to undergo consular processing, right? And this is a very, very big departure, obviously, from decades and decades of how adjustment of status has worked, right? We generally have not had to show discretion, even though discretion is in the regulations, right? So that is 100% in the regulations that they can deny all adjustments in discretion. In fact, if you've applied for your green card through our office in the past year, you will know that in my adjustment of status advisal that I've been giving everybody, it says all green cards are discretionary, right? So I've already known discretion was going to be an element of them trying to deny cases under this administration, and we've seen some discretionary denials already under this administration. But basically, this directive is just saying that they need to really, really, really look at discretion in all the cases, meaning that even if you meet all the legal standards, right, they can still deny you in their own discretion, right? Now, what does this mean practically, right? Now, obviously, the news since Friday has been honestly out of control. Just a lot of things I read were like, you have to leave the United States and do consular processing. And that's not what the memo says. The memo says it definitely encourages consular processing 100%. And I will likely be encouraging consular processing more in the future with certain applicants, right? But it does not kill adjustment of status by any means. Like a lot of the articles I read were basically saying adjustment of status is over, like no one can do adjustment of status. I do not believe that is true based on this memo. And, obviously all my colleagues have been in discussion with this over the 3-day holiday weekend, which they obviously did on purpose too. Like, and I need you guys to understand how difficult it's been to be an immigration lawyer over the past year. And I'm not saying like my difficulties are more than your difficulties. I thankfully I'm not living through this, although my husband adjusted his status through a marriage petition through me, right? So I would have been living with this problem, right? If it was my time, right? If this was 20 years ago when my husband was doing his green card case. So I do feel it from a very personal angle, right? Like I don't think that our young marriage in our early 20s would have been able to survive 2 years of consular processing, if I'm being really honest. So I get this. I totally get this from a very personal point of view. But I do believe that a lot of the news and advice is very super knee-jerk reactionary, right? And I just don't think with this administration that is ever a good approach. They often do put out these very, very, very sweeping announcements to create scare tactics, right? And make people think that there's only one path, right? And it's definitely not blocking adjustment of status 100%, but it will make adjustment of status so much harder. It will make it that basically everybody needs a lawyer to apply for adjustment of status, even the easiest cases. And frankly, they need a lawyer to analyze whether or not adjustment of status is even the best path forward at this point, right? Because it won't be for everybody. But it is not killing adjustment of status, right? It's just making it a lot harder, right? And not automatic. And we will need to see how it all plays out, right? And that's the thing with immigration. Obviously, I'm sure you saw in the news that they've also already backtracked a little bit on this memo, right? So they issued the memo on Friday. On Saturday, they were already, spokesperson in the USCIS was already coming out and backtracking a little bit, right? So they've already backtracked a little bit, especially in the context of like H-1Bs and things like that, which are dual intent visas, and it's kind of silly for them to not be able to adjust status. But we just kind of have to see how all of this is going to play out, right? I think it's very much too early to make any decisions about, especially pending cases. People are already in the adjustment process, you're already in the adjustment process, and I'm going to go through a few things right now. But I think my ultimate message is that for most people, I'm going to tell you to stay the course, right? Like we are already in it, we're already on a course. We just kind of have to stay the course at this point and see what happens, right? But I do think people need to be practical. They need to be thinking more about the fact that they may have to spend a few years abroad doing consular processing. That is going to be the destiny of a lot of people with these new memos, right? And also that they are likely going to incur significantly more costs, right, to do their immigration processing. Um, as much as I love all you guys, I cannot work for free, right? And if every single adjustment case requires so many more hours of my time and work, of course we have to charge more money for that, right? So there's obviously going to be financial and monetary consequences to all of this as well, right? And I'm always very honest with you guys and practical that I think that will be a consequence of all of this. But overall, I don't think it's a nail in the coffin, right? Now, USCIS loves to do this. They put out this new policy. They do it on purpose to create panic, chaos, stress. Like they want you to do that, right? If you panic, you are doing exactly what they want you to do, right? Like this administration loves to make people panic, right? Their policies from day one when it comes to immigration have done this, right? So it's to create client panic and then immigration lawyer burnout, right? Because those two things are going to go hand in hand, right? I have so many people that want to talk to me right now, and I would love to have individual meetings with all of you, but it's not realistic for me right now. First of all, I am going to my 20-year college reunion at the end of this week. I'm flying to Boston to go to my Boston College 20-year reunion. And I'm just going to be out of the office on Thursday and Friday, right? So I just literally can't have meetings on Thursday and Friday. And I have two appeal cases that have deadlines. I also just can't be having the same meeting over and over again with every single client, right? As much as I love you guys. And this is why I'm putting out this general content. And I will also put a link in the email that I'm sending this content out with that for a paid follow-up appointment, if you want to have an individual meeting. But unfortunately, I just have too many clients. I cannot do an individual meeting with every single person pending adjustment immediately. Like eventually, you can all have individual meetings with me, but just over the course of the next week or two, like I cannot have an individual meeting with every single adjustment of status client. That's just not realistic, right? Now, and the idea, like I said, is to cause burnout to people like me so that I literally want to quit, right? That is part of their goal. It's a war of attrition against immigration lawyers. I know so many immigration lawyers have already quit or cut back, or finding other practice areas because this is literally designed to ruin our lives. Like every immigration lawyer in the United States had their holiday weekend ruined by this memo, right? I personally had my parents flying into town on Thursday night to spend the holiday weekend with me and my family, and I kind of buried my head in the sand over the weekend because I wanted to enjoy my holiday weekend with my daughter and her grandparents and everything like that, and I don't feel bad about it. Because if I didn't allow myself to enjoy that holiday weekend, I would get burnt out. I wouldn't be able to do this anymore. I would go crazy. Okay, so I'm trying every day not to go crazy, and it's not easy, right? I'm constantly balancing your interests with my mental health because if I'm not mentally healthy, I can't help anybody, right? So, as they always say, put the mask on yourself before you put a mask on somebody else, right? When it comes to the airplane, right? And so, I can have to operate by that, or I will not be able to be an immigration lawyer anymore, right? So, anyways, just know that this is designed to make both you and me feel like this, right? This is literally one of their main goals, right? For you to panic, for you to be like, I gotta leave the US right now. There's no hope, right? Making people feel hopeless, I think is another thing that this government loves to do, and then making the immigration lawyers feel hopeless and making us want to quit, right? So, I mean, that is literally a stated goal of their policies, right? Now, let's try to stay calm. Let's see how this all plays out. I'm going to give you guys some examples of real life things that are happening right now. And that's another reason why I didn't want to do this right away. I wanted to see if they would backtrack. I wanted to see, I am going to tell you about some colleagues who have gone to USCIS today for adjustment interviews and what happened at those interviews, right? Like we need information before we can make any real analysis, real decisions. And this video is not going to make any decisions because it's still way too early to do that, right? Now, this policy, I don't think is going to be found legal, right? The Immigration and Nationality Act put the adjustment of status process in there so that people could do adjustment of status in the U.S. and not do consular processing. So I think it goes against the entire congressional scheme, congressional intent. It's contrary to USCIS' own policy in so many ways. The case law they cite in the memo is super old and doesn't even apply to the current statutory scheme. And there's already going to be a million lawsuits about this, right? So we have to see kind of how this all plays out. Will they actually implement it immediately? Will there be a quick court order forbidding them from putting it into place? Like, there's just so many things that could happen between now and your green card interview, right? Or your filing of your green card case. So we have to kind of wait and see right now, right? Now, we don't know if they're going to apply it retroactively to the cases that were already filed. They have given absolutely no guidance about any of these things, right? We're monitoring and we'll be giving updates as much as we can, right? You should be following our social media. I'm going to post this video on YouTube. I really think you should subscribe to my YouTube and, put the little follow so you get like the emails and the alerts when I post a new video, right? I will share those YouTube videos into my social media as well. But I have to address people in a large group because otherwise there's not enough time for me to have individual meetings with everybody, right? Realistically. Now, I was saying all that. Now let's talk practically, right? Now, I said that a colleague had gone to USCIS this morning. I'm actually just going to pull up his email, what he said, right? So he said, this is literally from 10 a.m. this morning, right? So about an hour ago, it's about 11:30 right now. And he said, I just left a green card interview at the USCIS Atlanta field office, and an officer told me they've not received any implementation memo. Thus, they are not implementing the new memo, right? However, she did say they could receive guidance at any minute, including to hold all adjudications until they receive implementation instructions, right? However, again, at the current moment, they have not been instructed to hold anything, and they have not been given any instructions on how to implement the memo, right? So this came from a colleague, his name's Sam Radin, who went to a green card interview this morning, Tuesday, May 26th, at the Atlanta field office and was told by the officer that they have not been given any instructions to implement this memo, right? Or hold cases. So that's good news, right? And we just don't know what's going to happen, right? Now, going along with that, right? You guys may recall something that happened back in October of last year, right? August of last year, we got a memo, right, from USCIS, right, August 15th, 2025, restoring comprehensive good moral character to naturalization, right? So when this came out, and if you've gotten my naturalization packages, you've seen that there is a additional package for good moral character. And I always said that if we started seeing them applying good moral character in this big discretionary analysis to every naturalization case, that I would warn you guys, right? This has already been, right, we're basically in June, right? We're almost in June of 2026. This came out in August of 2025. So it's almost a year. It's been 10 months. And they have absolutely not put this standard into practice. Like, that is just a reality. Most of my naturalization clients do not have to do any extra positive discretion, right? So basically what this said was that, before an absence, right, absence of wrongdoing was, right, was enough, right? So like if you never had a crime, you never committed immigration fraud, it was assumed you had positive good moral character, right, for naturalization. Now it says that they're supposed to do this holistic assessment of everything, right, for good moral character. That has not happened, at least not in a pattern, right? They are applying it, I think, individually to certain applicants who they do not like. But as a whole policy against everybody, 100%, I can tell you it's been almost 10 months. They are not applying that holistically, right? So that's what I'm saying about this adjustment memo. Who knows if they're going to actually apply it to everybody, right? They may very well not. They may be very selective at who they apply it to. They've been very selective on that good moral character memo, right? And so that's why I don't want to panic yet. We just don't know what's going to happen. And until time goes by, we're really not going to know, right? That's just the reality. We're not going to know until time goes by exactly what's going to happen, right? Now, just going back, like I said, there's been the INA itself, the Immigration Nationality Act, it implemented adjustment of status because they wanted to have a process here, and they've never said there has to be extraordinary circumstances. Like that is the case law cited there is so old, and it doesn't really apply anymore. That memo is so disingenuous on the law, which I think is one of the things they're going to challenge in court, right? Is how disingenuous it is, right? So, like I said, we've just got to kind of wait and see how these things play out. Now, this was something, I'm going to put this here on the screen, that a colleague posted on Friday. They said they got it on Friday or Thursday of last week, right? And this is a what we call a request for evidence letter. That's when USCIS wants additional evidence in your case, right? So this person got it on their I-45, their green card application, their adjustment of status, and obviously have to respond by August 12th, right? Now, they say in order to establish eligibility for your adjustment of status, we must demonstrate that there are positive factors in your case, right? And we warrant a favorable exercise of discretion. Positive factors may include, but are not limited to any of the following: family ties within the U.S., residence of long duration, particularly if your residence began at a young age, hardship to the applicant and the applicant's family if you can't get an adjustment of status, your education, your fluency in English, service in the U.S. Armed Forces, history of employment, existence of business and property ties in the U.S., evidence of value and service to the community in the U.S., paying your taxes in the U.S., proof of rehabilitation if there's a criminal record, and anything else you think can demonstrate positive discretion, right? And so um, we already know that people are getting these, right? And the reality is, for a lot of my clients, you will have a lot of these positive factors here. Like you will have a good education, you will be fluent in English, you will have great family ties in the US. I got people that are applying for adjustment who have DACA right now. So they came here as children, right? They've always worked, always paid taxes, right? A lot of people own homes in the US, own business. I have investors who have done investor visas. They own businesses in the US. They are employing a lot of Americans, right? And so even if they apply this memo to everybody, a lot of people still win, right? Because if you look at these factors, they will be in your favor, right? Now, there are some people that are not going to have great factors on this. Like if I just came in on my B2 visa and married my boyfriend or girlfriend and then filed a marriage case and I've not lived in the US for a long time and maybe I don't have a high education, maybe I'm not fluent in English, I don't own any business or property in the US, it may be harder. It may be harder to do an adjustment of status in those cases, right? But I don't think we should be giving up on adjustment of status by any means. I think we need to be fighting for these positive discretionary factors. Now, if we have to send in get a request for evidence letter like this, and we have to send in all this evidence and write a memo about why you have positive discretion and why you deserve your case, obviously we're going to have to charge to do this. I can't do this in every case, right? I can't do a good job, right? And for free, right? I need time to be able to do a good job, index, make exhibits, do the index, make the cover letter, do all these different things, guide you on your evidence, letters, hardship, things like that. I mean, these are essentially like almost little mini hardship waivers, right? And of course, we would have to charge on this, right? So, I mean, like, aside from spending more money, right, and obviously possibly losing, right, you can win still, right, even with these factors, right? So, I do think that, like I said, giving up right now, it would be silly on a lot of adjustments. We can win a lot of these positive cases, right? Now, we don't know how they're going to weigh all those factors, but like I said, we definitely do have people who have a lot of those factors in their favor, right? Now, what's the alternative, right? Doing consular processing. And listen, like I said, if you come to my office right now and you just got here on a visitor's visa and you're thinking about marrying your boyfriend or girlfriend and staying and filing for adjustment, I don't know if I'd recommend it right now because that is the kind of the classic case that they're trying to avoid, right? Consular processing is available. That's what I talk about in the memo. Like, is consular processing available? Like, you should be doing consular processing. And I'm probably going to recommend to people do consular processing in those scenarios, right? it's still the safest way anyways. And if you've read my adjustment of status advisal, right, I will include that when I send this out in the email. That I've been saying to people, the only safe way to do the process is to do consular processing, right? So I've been encouraging consular processing for over a year in many certain fact patterns, right? And I will continue to advise for consular processing in certain cases, right? Now, the fact is that a lot of you, I would 100% advise against consular processing. And there's probably two groups of people that I'm going to most advise against consular processing, unless and until you literally have to, because they're putting you in removal proceedings and you have to take a voluntary departure and leave the US, right? Um, but unless and until that happens, I'm going to encourage these two groups to continue to file, right? More than anyone else. The first ones are people that are subject to the visa bans, right? So if I'm on a 75 country visa ban or the 39 country security visa ban, I can't do consular processing because they will not give me the visa, right? And so those people are going to have to fight hard for adjustment because there is no alternative right now without those bans being lifted, right? So I just think obviously if I'm from Colombia, I'm from Brazil, I'm subject to the visa bans, right? That I should fight for adjustment of status here, right? Because consular processing until they lift the ban is not possible, right? Now, the other category of people, right, who are going to have to fight hard on discretion and try and do adjustments is the people that have too much unlawful presence in the US, right? So if I came in on my student visa, my visitor visa, and I've now overstayed years in the US, right? If I depart the US, I'm going to be subject to a 10-year bar and need what we call an I-601 unlawful presence waiver, right? Those waivers, and I'm going to put the processing times up in a second, will take years. You would be stuck abroad for years trying to do the waiver. Waivers are expensive. I will say that we usually charge like around $5,000 in legal fees on most waiver cases. And so it's adding a huge cost, right, to a case. And they take 2 or 3 years to get approved. And if they don't find the hardship, you're not going to get approved. Your waiver will get denied. You will not get your green card abroad, right? So if I have unlawful presence already in the US, too much unlawful presence, I got to fight for adjustment so hard because the alternative is awful, right? Like I will be abroad and separated from my family or my job or if through employment, my green card, for years, right? And so realistically, you guys have to fight. Now, people that are in status, right? Like if I have a completely valid status, like I'm here on an O1 extraordinary ability non-immigrant visa, right? And then I'm getting an extraordinary ability green card approved. I will probably recommend that they do consular processing. Just leave on the O1 visa to go to the consulate and do the interview to come back with your green card, right? There's nothing blocking you. You can go in and out on the O1 the whole time that case is pending. And why fight on adjustment of status when you could just go to the consulate and do your green card, right? Like it just, I don't think makes sense necessarily in a case like that to do that, right? And so, yeah, of course, like I said, there are going to be people that we're going to encourage to do consular processing over adjustment because they have the avenue open without any waivers or consequences, right? And they can be in the US here in a different status while the consular case is pending, right? Like for example, I have an interview in like 2 weeks in Paris, and my client got the green card through a labor certification, and they currently live here on E2 investor visas, but they had a new grandbaby in France, so they didn't want to not be able to travel to the birth of their grandbaby and things like that. So we chose consular processing to have the freedom of traveling, not have to wait for a travel permit on an adjustment case. So that was a choice we made months ago, nothing to do with this memo. But um, often people who are in valid statuses will choose consular processing so that they're not subject to travel restrictions on the adjustment and other reasons, right? So there's always been people choosing consular processing who could adjust for their own personal reasons, right? So like I said, on new cases going forward, we will, look at all those factors and obviously decide. But people that have unlawful presence who need an unlawful presence waiver, it would make no sense not to fight for an adjustment of status. And people that are subject to visa bans, also, it would make no sense not to fight for adjustment of status, right? And like I said, if you're already pending, we don't even know if it's going to apply retroactively, meaning that, it may only apply to the new cases that are filed. We have to wait on all of that. And I'm going to tell you, stay the course, right? Until something changes and stay the course, right? We're going to fight for the adjustment. We're going to, You saw that list of the positive discretionary factors. You may want to start bulking it up. Like if you don't speak English well, enroll in an English course, right? And so we can show I'm currently taking English classes, right? Like I may not speak English great right now, but I'm currently taking English classes. I'm really trying to learn, right? You may want to go and get a certificate, as a, nursing aide, whatever, right? Whatever you're eligible for, whatever you like, right? To just bulk it up. You may want to volunteer more at your church, right? So that you can already be building up your discretion, right? So there's always ways to be building our discretion while we're waiting for our green card returns, right? Now, I said I was going to show you some processing times, right? Because the alternatives do stink, right? And some of you went over this when we consulted and chose adjustment of status. We chose it because of the processing times, right? Um, but let's just take a look here, right? I-130s, petition for alien relatives. I-130s is the most common basis for a green card. These are what we call family petitions. This is when you're getting your green card, right, through a family member. And we're looking at the category U.S. citizen filing for a spouse, parent, or a minor child, right? That's our immediate relative category, right? Um, in the service center operations, it's currently looking at 19 months, right? So that's a huge wait time, over a year and a half for the I-130 petition to get approved. And then I usually tell people, depending on the embassy, it can be another 6 months for visa scheduling. Some embassies have really long lines, so it could be like over a year for visa scheduling, right? So it can be a 2 to 2.5 year process as the spouse, parent, or minor child of a U.S. citizen, right? Our immediate relative category. And that's without a waiver, right? If I needed a waiver, right, we have two types of waivers. We have I-601, right? I-601 is when I'm living abroad or already am abroad, and I have to do the waiver after my consular interview, right? So I would still, sorry, their page is frozen. I'm going to refresh it. Where I waited a year and a half for the I-130 to get approved, and now I have to wait for my waiver after I had my consular interview. So I waited like 2 years for my consular interview from start to finish, and now I have to start a waiver process from outside of the US to waive my unlawful presence, right? And that waiver process post-interview, post my consular interview, is 39 months, over 3 years, right? So this is why if you have unlawful presence, it is crazy. You have to fight on your adjustment of status case. If we fight, we appeal, we go to federal court and fight them in federal court, we can hopefully get to at least 2028, and maybe this whole thing will be reversed by a new government, right? Like that's going to have to be the goal for some people, like getting through to 2028 and hoping that there's policy changes, right? Because this alternative is awful, right? Now, people that are here in the US already, we could do the I-130 first, right? Which would be, again, 19 months, right, on average. And of course, this is probably going to grow with these new policy changes, right? So I would assume processing times will only get longer, not shorter. And then we would need to do a I-601, a provisional unlawful presence waiver. This is when the person's in the U.S. and waits for the decision in the U.S., but the whole time you're illegal, right? So you could, you're undocumented, you don't have status, so you could be placed in removal proceedings or deported while you're waiting for this waiver, right? So it's not like safe status or anything like that. But if you can get the waiver done here, it cuts off the time abroad, right? So obviously we'd want to do I-601A over I-601 if we can. And I-601A has a shorter processing time of 26 months, but it's still over 2 years, right? That you could get placed in removal proceedings, could get detained because you have no status usually if you're here doing this type of thing, right? And so either way, it's long. My point is, either way, it's years and years and years to go through consular processing, and this is in our immediate relative category. If you're a spouse of a resident, you're, a different category, it would take even longer, of course. But nobody's going to choose that who has unlawful presence. It just doesn't make sense, right? So we have to fight for the adjustment. Like we don't have a choice. We have to fight for adjustment to the nail. Hope that we get a positive discretion. If not, we hope we appeal on discretion. We could try our green cards again in immigration court. Immigration court is not subject to this memo, right? It's only USCIS, so the judges who do adjustments are not subject to this memo, right? So you may have a better chance with a judge now than you do with USCIS. But again, who knows, right? We have to just wait step by step to see what happens in each individual case. We will not know until we go through all the steps, right? What happens in each individual case and what strategy we have to do forward, right? So a lot of you want answers, and the reality is there are no answers, right? Like anyone promising answers online and TikTok video and this or that, is an idiot, right? Because like there's just I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot predict the future. I have to see how this all plays out. And in each individual case, it's likely going to be a different outcome, realistically, right? So it doesn't even matter. Like, even if we start seeing patterns, they're not going to apply to 100% of people. And a lot of people are just going to have to try and see what happens, right? There's going to be a lot of trial and error right now. Trial and error. Okay. Um, like I said, if you don't have any unlawful presence, right? So people who obviously are in status, right? I'm on a student visa, I'm on an H-1B visa, I'm on an O-1 visa, I'm on my E-2 visa, whatever, right? If I have status here, I don't have any unlawful presence, and the consulate's always open, doors always open to me, right? Now, other people who may not have any unlawful presence are people who filed for asylum while they were still in status, right? Because asylum pending doesn't accrue unlawful presence, right? Doesn't give you any status either. I've had many videos about this. I have this in my advisal, but it does protect against unlawful presence, right? And now this is going to become huge for people because you can go abroad and do your consular case with no waiver, right? So having that pending case for asylum in that sense, it's going to be a huge protection because you don't have unlawful presence, right? Now, same thing with a pending adjustment of status case. There's no unlawful presence. A pending change or extension of status, no unlawful presence. So anyone that has no unlawful presence always has the options to leave and switch to consular processing, right? So that door is going to be open to those people, right? It's really the waiver people and the people subject to the immigrant visa bans who are gonna, like I said, have to fight tooth and nail for their adjustment of status, right? And I keep bringing up money, but because I'm practical, like I just don't want these things to hit you guys, and then you tell me I don't have the money for this, right? Like you need to start saving. Like this has to be one of your priorities in your life, right? Like that you are saving little pots of money for additional legal fees, possible deportation funds if you get placed in removal proceedings, because there are people that are going to get denied adjustment on discretion, get placed in removal proceedings, and then they're going to have to pay the lawyer to do removal proceedings, right? Like, don't let it come out of nowhere for you financially. Like, you need to be financially, emotionally, psychologically, and documentarily preparing for your case, right? Like I was saying, do things that will make your discretion look better. Start volunteering, start doing English classes, start doing this, making sure you're, filing your taxes on time. Like all of these different things can be done proactive, right? Because we have to always look at what can we control and what can we not control, right? We cannot control the policy memos of the government. We cannot control how they implement the policy. We cannot control this administration, right? I am a little bit of a control freak. That's hard for me, but I also practice serenity prayer all the time, and I ask God to give me the grace to recognize what I can control and what I cannot control, right? And so let's think about what we can control versus what we cannot control, right? We can control whether we choose adjustment of status or consular process when we are in status, right? We can control building up equities, what I call equities, towards our positive discretion, right? Like there's so many things we can do to build up positive discretion. And so do them, right? We can also be saving up money, right, towards our funds that we are going to need for all these cases, right? I always tell everyone, if you don't need them in the end, great, you just have savings to do whatever you want, right? But if you do need them, the financial hit is not going to hurt as badly because you have been saving up for this, right? And so those are the types of things that we can control, right? And those are the things we have to focus on. Now, I am a very positive person. Most of you guys know that, right? Like I am just, I try to live my life with the most positive intentions possible. But I'm also a realistic person. I'm always honest with you guys. I'm always realistic with you guys. And, this is definitely scenarios where we have to continue to hope for the best, be positive, but we also have to start preparing for the worst a little bit, right? We can't have our heads in the sand completely, right? These policies are going to negatively affect um, some people for sure, right? And so we do need to be smart, right, on preparing for the worst and continuing to hope every day for the best, right? So I tell everyone, do your preparation, start working on your positive discretion, start putting powers of attorney in place over properties, children, whatever you need to do, right, in case you have to leave the US, right? Be smart, don't be stupid, right? Be smart, but At the same time, these are backup plans, right? Because we are focusing on the eyes on the prize, positive that things will work out on plan A, right? But having a contingency plan in place nowadays, I think, is important, right? We have to start having contingency plans, right? And so start working on your contingency plans because this is predictable that obviously some people are going to be very negatively impacted by all of this. Now, like I said, I'm going to be monitoring, and as we see more people coming in with these types of requests for evidence letters on discretion, if we see it starting to happen on every case, we may start just raising our initial fee on adjustment and including positive discretion packages, right, in all of our new adjustment cases. I just don't know yet, right? Because A, I think it's going to get struck down in the court relatively soon, or at least paused or something, right? And so I don't want to take people's money if they end up not needing all that stuff either, right? Like I'm not in the business of taking your guys' money for no reason, right? And so like I said, where we have to monitor and wait. Now, I have a great test case that I'm going to next week, or I guess not next week. It'll be like Monday of not next Monday, the following Monday. I want to say it's June 8th, right? That's my next green card interview that I am attending person, right? And it's in the Atlanta field office, and it's a great test case, right? In that case, it is a spouse of a U.S. citizen. They have a small child together, right? So very clearly a real marriage. They have like a 3-year-old child together. My client came in on a student visa, also had a J1 visa at one point. She is a PhD, right? So she was doing a PhD program at the University of Georgia, right? So she was going to a great university, right? The University of Georgia is a top ranked university. And she was doing her doctorate and working as a professor, right? Which is very common, right? You're a professor, you're, assistant professor, you're working on your doctorate, right? So this is very high level woman who has a doctorate degree, was working at the University of Georgia and studying there, met her husband, right? Got married, they had their child together. He was a green card holder at the time, so she had to wait. He's now become a US citizen. But both of them are super highly educated. Their combined income is close to $1 million, right? So they are very wealthy too. They have amazing jobs, right? She's never worked without authorization. She, like I said, is highly educated, never has no fraud issues. They had a prior denial of an adjustment of status on a USCIS error, right? USCIS made a mistake in the application of the law, right? Which is the reason she doesn't have her green card right now. It's 100% USCIS error. It was such a USCIS error, they refunded the appeal money to us, right? Like we paid for an appeal. They literally refunded the appeal money because when it's their error, they are supposed to refund the appeal money, right? So they recognize they made a mistake. They actually refunded the $800 appeal fee to my client, right? So she has such a great case, right? Because when you look at, and they own their house together in the Atlanta area. And so when we look at her, she's got this super amazing education. She's 100% fluent in English, right? She was doing her PhD here, right? She's very fluent in English. She's got a doctorate degree. She has a U.S. citizen child, U.S. citizen husband, totally real marriage. Only in this position because of USCIS error, which they have recognized that they made a mistake on the law and denying an adjustment a few months ago to her. And there would be hardship in that case because of the country of origin is not, let's say, an ideal country in many ways. And so when we look at that positive discretion factor, and she's been here for many, many years, so she was studying and doing the PhD, right? And so I am very interested in what will happen at her green card interview on June 8th, because she is someone that kind of hits all of these bullet points on discretion, right? So if people are going to get granted in discretion, like it should be somebody like her, right? She couldn't help that she was in her 30s, she fell in love, wanted to start a family, and why she was doing this doctorate program and teaching at the University of Georgia as a professor, right? And so, like I said, you could not have a greater profile. So I'm so lucky that I have this wonderful test case, right, coming up on June 8th, because I really couldn't have asked for better facts, right, for my test case, right? Because I do think it's going to be harder, for example, And we'll see what happens. I have a lot of cases pending like this where, for example, I just married my spouse while I was here on a visitor's visa, and I am a good person, but nothing like, no extraordinary positive discretion, let's say, right? And so I want to see, because if they deny her, then I'm obviously going to be adjusting my status. I mean, not just my status, adjusting my strategy, not my status, right? Because if she can't win with a doctorate, a real marriage with a small child, toddler together, property, they, like I said, are extremely wealthy. They have the joint tax returns for them, like they know how much money they make. Obviously positively contributing to the US. She's a professor. It's University of Georgia. It's not like, not that there's anything wrong with it, but there's not like a small unknown university. There's a big, major, top-ranked university, right? Like if she cannot get an adjustment, I don't know who can, right? And so I'm gonna see, right? And so once we start seeing how these cases play out, obviously we'll be able to give much, much better advice, right? But it's just really early, right? And so I know you guys want answers. I know you do, right? But there's just not answers to give right now. I mean, I can make stuff up, right? I can speculate, I can guess, right? But that doesn't help you. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help me, right? Now, one of the things that you may or may not like about me is that I'm going to stay calm, right? I'm not going to be one of these lawyers that's going to get completely crazy. Like I have so many colleagues who have lost their mind over the weekend. And I get it. Like all of us are different, and I'm just not wired like that. I'm not going to lose my mind. I'm going to stay calm. I think it's to your advantage for me to stay calm and level-headed throughout all of this, right? Not to panic. Like if I'm panicking, obviously it's going to cause you to panic. Most of you know this. I have my 7-year-old daughter, and we talk about emotional regulation all the time, right? And they always say, you as the parent, the number one thing you can do for emotional regulation for your child is to regulate your own emotions, right? Again, going back to I have to put my mask on before I help anyone put their mask on, right? And when I stay calm, right, and I'm able to regulate my emotions, and I'm not 100% when I'm a parent, I lose my shit on my daughter sometimes, right? I'm not perfect. But most of the times I really do everything in my power to keep my own emotions regulated. And that calms her down, immediately. And how she reacts is so dependent on how I react, right? And my level of emotional regulation. And I'm really going to try hard, guys, to stay level-headed, stay calm, stay emotionally regulated, because that's how I think I help you guys the best, right? By me being able to think clearly, think objectively, right? Not fall into the traps of panic, complete and utter panic, right? Not make rash and impulsive decisions, right? I have so many lawyers, like Louis, like my good friends, take me like, I need to tell everybody to leave. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, do not do that. I'm like, relax. So do not do that, right? Like lawyers literally being like, I need to email every client, tell them they have to leave. Like, that is crazy. Like, that is not being a good lawyer. Like, that is not being a good lawyer. But some people, I see those lawyers and they can't regulate their emotions, right? They just got too emotional about it and too reactionary and too impulsive, knee-jerk impulsive reactions, and that's not going to help anyone, right? I strongly believe that. And if you're looking for that type of lawyer, then obviously I'm not the right fit for you. Like I am going to stay calm and steady. Like I'm gonna try my best, my damnedest, right? Because I also know that that's what they want from us. Like they want me to lose it. They want me to be in a panic. They want me to get so frazzled that I'm just telling you all like, "Ah!" Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that. That plays right into their hands, and that's not what I want. Like, that's not what I want for you guys. That's not what I want for me, and it does not help anybody. Okay, so please just bear with me. Know that I am literally monitoring this every day. Some of you guys know this, that I am the vice chair of a national committee for the American Immigration Lawyers Association. That is a big deal. Like there are like 20,000 immigration lawyers. That is our what we call the immigration bar, right? That is all good immigration lawyers are members of the American Immigration Lawyer Association, right? And we are waiting on practice advisories that they are going to put out on these topics too, that we will be able to share and help clients more. But my committee is what we call the Family Section Steering Committee, and so that it literally has to do with family immigration, right? Family petitions, like that is our focus of that committee, right? And so I do draft practice advisories for other lawyers. We probably will be doing one and, host panels, moderate a lot of panels for that national group, right? That national group, because I'm the vice chair, and we are so not that a job. I don't get paid to do this volunteer work, but it does give me a stronger pulse on what's happening nationally on these topics because it's one of my roles. Like in order for me to be in this role, selected from the 20,000 immigration attorneys that belong to the American Immigration Lawyers Association to vice chair this national committee, right? They know that I have to really be paying attention to everything, right? So I have to pay attention to, I think, even more than the average immigration lawyer because of this role. I serve on AILA, that's AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, because of this national role that I have, right? And so I don't take it lightly. I take my role as the vice chair very, very seriously. I take my role to you guys very seriously. And, and I do care a lot, right? Too much sometimes for my own good, but I do care. This is not, I'm not like a lawyer just to make money. I'm actually the opposite, like Miriam, my sister Miriam will tell me like I'm very bad at collecting on bills, and I always say yes to everyone who asks for an extension of payments. And but I can't help myself. Like if I could do it all for free, I would, guys. But I just can't. I have to run a business and take care of my family and all these different things, just like all of you. And so I have to obviously cannot ignore the business financial side, right, of being a lawyer. But it's not my like I didn't become a lawyer to be rich, right? Like that was not my goal. Like I am one of the people who became a lawyer to help people. I do have colleagues who are running, for lack of a better term, immigration factories, right? They just do thousands of cases and are milling out cases and teach their own. They that's the type of financial success they wanted. I like to know everything that's going on in all the cases. I keep my caseload very manageable so that I know all of you guys personally. I know what's going on in your cases. And I'm giving a very personalized touch to every file, right, in the office, right? And so I will continue to do that. And like I said, if I think you have to pivot on your case status, I will reach out. I will tell you, listen, I don't think you win your case. I think you need to depart. I think you need to do a new strategy, whatever, right? So don't worry. I will tell you all if you have to pivot and change your status and change your strategy, but right now it's way too early to be having any of those discussions, right? Like it's just way, way, way too early. We need more information. We need to see if they're going to backtrack. We need to see if there's going to be court striking this down. We need to see how it's going to play out in real life in the field office, right? And so, like I said, as more information comes in, I will be making more of these videos or little alerts, and fingers crossed it won't be as bad as what we think. I just don't know anymore. It's so, I mean, one of the other issues with this administration generally is just unpredictability, right? Like we're all learning together. Nothing like this has ever happened before. There's no way to predict their actions. They are an unpredictable entity. And so we are constantly having to just be on our toes and adjust, right? So anyways, guys, just let me do my job, right? And monitor the situation, let you know if there is real changes that we see in high levels at the field offices. I just don't know. I do not know at this point, right? And the other thing I want to say is that there are reports from other lawyers like over the weekend of getting approvals of green cards, right? So even after they did this, like there are I-45 approvals that have rolled in since the memo was implemented, right? And so who knows what's really going to happen, right? Only time will tell. Give us time, give us grace, right? If you guys are all trying to call and email me every day about this memo, it doesn't give me time to produce content. It doesn't give me time to work on the cases. It doesn't give me time to monitor the situation, right? And it's just not useful for me to repeat the same thing over and over again to every single client, right? And I hope you guys can respect that. Like it's not because I'm trying to dodge you, trying to get out of meeting with you guys. It's just efficiency, right? Like I have to stay efficient right now because we'll fall behind on everything, right? And so realistically, for us to keep on effectively representing you all, please, if you really need to have a meeting, of course, I understand, but if the general principles of this already answered your questions, I would ask you please not set up an individual meeting. If you have a short question, send me an email with a short question, just like particularly like, oh, you said something in your video, like how does that apply to me? That's fine, but I can't. I mean, I can, but it would be so non-constructive to not only you but to all the clients, both pending and new cases, for me to have 1 hour meetings discussing the same thing over and over again with each one of you, right? And I really, really, like I said, hope out of my heart you understand that uh, it's like I said, not to avoid you all, not to avoid hard questions. It's just because it's an efficiency issue. Like I have to stay productive, or all of this is for nothing, right? If I can't do the work and file the cases and monitor the situation and adjust and think about the strategies, then how are we ever going to move forward, right? So please, 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 guys, I know you're so worried. Know that I feel for you so much. Like I said, both on a lawyer level and then, like I said, on a very personal level, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, like I've lived through this with my own spouse, and I cannot imagine like it happening to me in my own relationship, right? And so it's very easy for me to put myself in those shoes and imagine it because I've lived through, the green card process with my own husband, right? And so it's coming out of not just a legal base, but a personal, very personal experience. I may not be an immigrant myself, but I love and am married to an immigrant, right? So I have dealt with all of this from the US citizen side, right? And so it's not like lost on me by any means, right, guys? So anyways, please hang in there. Just know that this whole thing is designed to make you feel like this, right? And so I'm not saying don't give in to those feelings. All those feelings are valid. I've had those feelings too. I mean, much as I said I tried to ignore it, like I totally did not like sleep at all, really, on Friday night after the memo came out. I just kept on thinking about all the cases. And then I was like, this is not helpful. Like me being exhausted and like morally just down and everything like is not going to help me make solutions to these problems, right? And so I got myself out of that, cleared my head, and we're warriors, we have to keep fighting, and we have to keep our heads clear, we have to keep our eyes on the prize, and just know that I'm here. I've got your back the best that I can. So a lot of things are out of my control. I am not a magician. I cannot like fix everything with a magic wand. Not a fairy godmother, and so I will do my best. That's all I can promise. Is I promise you two things. I will do my best, and my best is really good. It's better than the average, far better than the average immigration lawyer. No offense to the average immigration lawyer, but just realistically, I can see I'm very modest. Anyways, and I care. Right. And you really can't ask for more than that from your lawyer. Like, I'm very good at my job. I know the law extremely well. I know the policies extremely well. I know the procedures extremely well. I also get not insider information, but I get more information from these roles that I have on these committees, right? I'm also serve on the Florida Bar Board Certification Committee for Immigration Law, right? So help write and grade the exams for people who want to become board certified in Florida as immigration experts, right? Lawyers want to become immigration experts. So I just have this more insider point of view than the average immigration lawyer who don't sit on these big, 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 statewide and national committees, right? And so really that's all you can ask, that your lawyer knows the law very well, cares, is monitoring the law, staying up to date on everything, and cares about you, right, as a person and as a client, right? And I can say that's like, I cannot control a lot of things, but those are two things I can control, that I put my best effort into every case. I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, right? I'm a human, and honestly, this has been so stressful. This last year of my life has been one of the most stressful, right? And I'm still hanging in here. I always try to do my best. I always put my best effort into. I really care. I supervise and look at everything that gets filed in our office. And I genuinely do care, right? And that's, like I said, really all you can ask for your immigration lawyer are those things, right? And so please, like I said, grace, 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 patience. And I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy. I know we all want answers right away, but this is just not a situation where we have answers right away. Okay. If you asked me like a year ago when ICE first started rounding up people, people thought every single person going to a USCIS interview would be rounded up. Like that has not happened. It did not play out like that. Thank God it did not play out like that, right? It's so rare still for people to get picked up at a USCIS interview, right? But there was a point where we thought, oh my God, every person that goes to immigration court, every person that goes to USCIS is going to get picked up by ICE, right? And we had to wait and see what would happen. And thankfully, it was not as bad as what we thought, right? And so, it's still bad. Don't get me wrong. It's still a lot of people getting picked up more than ever, but it's not like every single case gets picked up by any means, right? And so, let's just hope it's going to be like that. It's going to be kind of selective. It's going to be a small percentage. And in that I'm hoping it will kind of mirror what happened with that naturalization memo, where it is very selectively applied to people. And we'll see. We'll see what happens on that case on June 8th. I also have other green card cases pending that I'm not going to necessarily, but that's one I'm going to be at personally, and I'll be able to speak to the officer about new policies implemented. And obviously, lawyers are sharing amongst each other any intel we get when we're at USCIS, right? And I do have two clients going to green card interviews in the next 2 days, and I'm going to be asking them. They're going in. One's going in Dallas, one's going in New Orleans, and I will be finding out kind of what they say at those interviews from them too, right? And if anything changes or if there's anything major, I will be alerting you all, right? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Post comments and questions, and I will do my best to answer them. If you have particular questions from what you heard in this video. Yeah, all right, hang in there, please. All right, guys, peace, love, bye.